Hey everyone, ready to dive deep into the world of Jurassic World? Rebirth? Released on July 2nd, 2025. This film has sparked endless discussions, and today, we're uncovering every thrilling detail. If you enjoy this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us grow. And for more incredible movie explorations and hidden gems, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's unravel the magic behind this cinematic masterpiece. It begins in eerie silence. A mist rises above dense tropical foliage, broken only by the deep, rhythmic thud of distant footsteps. We're not on familiar ground anymore. This is Isla Sorna Reclamation Zone 9, a newly classified sanctuary hidden from the public eye. Decades after the initial dinosaur experiments and the chaos of Dominion, the world has attempted to box its monsters into corners. Zones, sanctuaries, controlled wilds. But nature has never been interested in boundaries. Enter Parkergenics, a biotech juggernaut operating in moral gray zones. Officially, they're preserving genetic history. Unofficially, they're after something far more dangerous. We're introduced to Zora Bennett, played with striking intensity by Scarlett Johansson. She's not your typical mercenary leader. A former paleogeneticist turned rogue specialist, she's been pulled back into the game for one last mission. Recover viable DNA samples from 3 extinct species previously lost in the chaos of the Biosyn collapse. She's joined by a tight-knit extraction team. Darnell Voss, Mahershala Ali, a world-weary tracker with haunted eyes. Dr. Henry Loomis, Jonathan Bailey, a cerebral but skeptical geneticist, and Teresa Delgado Luna Blaze, a young tech expert trained in biosignal mapping. They board a state-of-the-art vessel, the Resurgence, equipped for stealth and survival. But fate and film has other plans. A sudden storm, almost supernatural in violence, wrecks their transport. They crash land on an uncharted island near the Southeast Pacific Trench, an island cloaked in myth and misinformation. Their instruments are scrambled. Radio silence. The jungle breathes around them, alive with chirps, growls, and something far more sinister. They're not alone, and they're not where they think they are. Meanwhile, we follow a separate thread, the Foster family, sailing a low-budget eco-expedition with their teen kids. The parents, marine biologists seeking plankton mutations from rising ocean temps, unwittingly drift into forbidden waters and run aground on the same island. Their storyline, initially light and humorous, soon becomes terrifyingly relevant. What should have been a tropical detour turns into a primal nightmare, and their survival will depend on strangers they never meant to meet. From the moment the team discovers dinosaur footprints, deep, clawed, 6-toed impressions, the tone shifts. They aren't tracking standard species. Parkergenics had been experimenting with recombinants before their facility burned. On this island, they perfected their creations. The most terrifying? The Distortus Rex, a 6-limbed predator genetically engineered from a fusion of theropod DNA, amphibian regenerative code, and cephalopod neural mapping. It's not just strong, it's smart. Ambush-level smart. Watching smart. It doesn't hunt. It studies. Gareth Edwards directs with a slow-burn intensity that pays homage to the original Jurassic Park. There are no sweeping music cues or over-reliance on CGI. Instead, we get grounded, pulse-pounding sequences, like when the group hides beneath a massive fallen log as a trio of feathered dromaeosaurs pass by, their skin glistening in the rain. Practical animatronics return, breathing realism into the creatures. The dino roars were recorded by blending tiger growls, whale songs, and distressed alligator hisses. Every sound is visceral. Every shadow hides possibility. As alliances form between the Mercs and the Fosters, character layers are peeled back. Zora isn't in it for science. She's seeking redemption for a sister who died in a lab breach years ago. Loomis begins to question his allegiance to science over humanity. Darnell slowly emerges as the heart of the group, his tactical brilliance born from a tragic history in jungle warfare. Teresa forms a bond with the Foster kids, especially the youngest, who treats the horror unfolding with the awe of a child seeing monsters come alive. The island's secrets unravel slowly. Hidden underground is a Parkergenics vault, one that houses cryogenic DNA samples, monitoring systems, and a blueprint for a new world order. The plan? Not conservation, not revival, replacement. Parkergenics wants to introduce a new apex ecosystem where human control over evolution is final. But the creatures, led by the Distortus Rex, have already begun evolving. There are nesting sites, pack hierarchy, mutations unaccounted for, and then disaster. The vault power fails, cryopods rupture, dozens of unreleased hybrids escape into the wild. The second act becomes a relentless survival epic. Flares in the night, a horrifying ambush in an abandoned tree village, an underwater escape through a flooded cave filled with glowing, bioluminescent Compsognathus. The jungle, once exotic, turns into a claustrophobic death trap. Edwards utilizes long tracking shots, handheld chaos, and sudden silences to let tension boil. There's a return to form, less about spectacle, more about suspense. And it works. As dawn breaks, the remaining survivors regroup atop a ridge, overlooking the burning forest. A distress signal finally gets through. But rescue means bringing attention to what lies on this island. Zora must make a choice. Expose the truth and risk corporate retaliation, or bury it all and ensure these creatures die in darkness. In a heart-pounding finale, she sacrifices her chance at freedom to trigger a volcanic failsafe buried beneath the island. A last-ditch security protocol originally installed by InGen years ago. Helicopters arrive. The foster kids survive. Loomis, wounded but alive, records a final log, warning that evolution doesn't stop because we're afraid of it. In a haunting closing shot, deep in the jungle, a single hybrid egg cracks. Something blinks. Jurassic World, Rebirth is more than a soft reboot. It's a bold, emotionally resonant reimagining of a franchise that had leaned too heavily into bombast. With David Koepp returning to the writing chair, the narrative finds its grounding again, not just in dinosaurs but in the ethics of playing God. Themes of control versus chaos, science without conscience, and the enduring terror of nature reclaiming its space all pulse beneath the surface. Scarlett Johansson's performance is gritty and vulnerable, a far cry from standard action leads. Mahershala Ali adds gravitas and moral weight. Jonathan Bailey's quiet intensity complements the film's cerebral layers, and Luna Blaze injects youthful urgency. Alexander Desplat's score is sweeping yet intimate, blending traditional orchestration with tribal percussion and eerie choral motifs. And the cinematography? Lush, textured, drenched in greens and golds, each frame like a painting pulled from a dream and dipped in fear. What makes Rebirth stand out is its refusal to be just another Dino flick. It's an evolution of tone, of storytelling, and of the franchise itself. And as the credits roll, we're left with more questions than answers. Not just about what's next, but about what we've become. If you were as captivated by this cinematic journey as we were, go ahead and tap that like button. It helps us bring more in-depth explorations straight to fans like you. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe for more hidden gems, behind-the-scenes secrets, and thrilling movie deep dives. Until next time, keep questioning what's behind the curtain, and beware the footsteps in the jungle. It arrived like thunder crashing through a dense, prehistoric jungle. Jurassic World, Rebirth, released on July 2, 2025, wasn't just a movie. It was a seismic event that reignited the fire of a beloved franchise while blazing a bold, unpredictable path into the unknown. After years of critical fatigue and audience burnout following Jurassic World Dominion, no one quite knew what to expect. Another sequel? A soft reboot? A nostalgia play? But from the first frame it became clear. This wasn't just another dinosaur movie. This was a resurrection, a reawakening, a cinematic reckoning. Directed by Gareth Edwards, the visionary behind Rogue One and Monsters, and penned by Jurassic Park alum David Koepp, Rebirth is both a return to the essence of what made the original 1993 classic a cultural touchstone and a daring step into fresh, ferocious territory. It's a film that sheds the bloated spectacle of its immediate predecessors and instead embraces something raw, something intimate, something terrifyingly beautiful. It's a film where the roars of dinosaurs echo not just through dense canopies and hollow valleys, but through the recesses of human ambition, regret, and redemption. From the very start, Edwards invites us into a world that feels familiar, but unsteady, unpredictable. Gone are the sanitized parks and high-tech security grids. Instead, we open in humid chaos. A covert parkergenics expedition storming through a forgotten jungle in search of something unspeakable. A failed extraction. A desperate escape. A glimpse of something with too many limbs, moving too silently for its size. Then darkness. And then silence. Just like that, the world knows something's wrong. But no one dares say it out loud. Enter Zora Bennett, played with mesmerizing complexity by Scarlett Johansson. A former paleogeneticist turned extraction leader, Zora is a study in contradictions, brilliant but scarred, capable but conflicted. Tasked with recovering ancient DNA from a restricted island off the coast of Southeast Asia, she's recruited by Parkergenics to lead a covert team deep into uncharted territory. She carries more than tactical gear. She carries guilt, history, and a name she can't bear to say aloud. With her is Darnell Voss, Mahershala Ali, a hardened survivalist whose silence says more than dialogue ever could, and Dr. Henry Loomis, Jonathan Bailey, a reluctant geneticist drawn into the mission for reasons even he doesn't fully understand. As the team ventures into the Lost Island, it becomes immediately clear. This is not Isla Nublar. This is no theme park or forgotten facility. This is something far older, more primal, an ecosystem shaped not by nature but by tampering, by cruelty, by secrecy. They crash land in the wake of a freak storm and find themselves stranded. Not alone, and very much prey. They aren't the only ones there. A civilian family, the Fosters, also find themselves trapped, pulled in by misfortune and naivety. What was supposed to be a quiet marine biology expedition quickly turns into a fight for survival. From here, the plot weaves a tightly wound thread of tension, horror, and revelation. The island is home to creatures no one ever sanctioned, hybrids never disclosed, and among them, the apex, Distortus Rex, a six-limbed abomination of evolved terror. It's not just the film's monster, it's its mirror. Distortus is everything that Parkergenics hoped to create. Intelligence, strength, adaptability, and something else. Something it wasn't supposed to have. Purpose. It stalks not randomly but methodically. It observes. It remembers. It knows what the humans don't. The brilliance of Rebirth lies in how it unfolds. Edwards doesn't bombard us with action from the outset. He builds a pressure cooker of dread. Every rustle of leaves, every shifting shadow hints at the impending violence. Long takes linger, forcing us to scan the frame, hearts pounding. Practical effects return in triumphant form, with animatronics used for close-ups, lending weight and tangibility to the dinosaur's presence. When the action does arrive, it hits with ferocity and consequence. An ambush in a subterranean vault, a horrifying chase through a fog-choked mangrove, a desperate climb atop a skeletal treetop network built by the island's smaller pack predators. Yet amidst the chaos, there's humanity. Johansson delivers one of her most grounded performances yet, her character grappling with ethical demons and emotional scars in equal measure. Her chemistry with Ali is electric, not romantic, but layered with shared trauma and mutual respect. Bailey's Loomis is the heart of the film's conscience, forced to confront the reality that science, in the wrong hands, doesn't just cross lines, it obliterates them. Luna Blaze, as Teresa Delgado, adds urgency and spark, representing a generation raised on stories of dinosaur theme parks who now face the monsters made real by unchecked ambition. Visually, the film is a masterclass. Cinematographer Greg Fraser drenches the screen in greens, golds, and the deep, threatening hues of tropical dusk. Night scenes shimmer with bioluminescent spores floating through the jungle air, hinting at mutations far beyond dinosaurs. In one haunting sequence, a river glows blue with plankton as a shadow glides beneath, unblinking. Alexander Desplat's score is both sweeping and intimate, paying subtle homage to John Williams while finding a voice all its own, melancholy, mysterious, occasionally explosive. As secrets unravel, the real horror sets in. The island is not natural. It is a manufactured testing ground, abandoned by its creators and left to evolve unchecked. The creatures are not simply dinosaurs. They are evolutionary experiments, hybrids bred for military applications, escaped from facilities long since destroyed. And now they're thriving, nesting, building hierarchies, planning. One sequence reveals the island's true nature. An underground lab partially submerged in lava rock, filled with flickering holograms and specimen tanks still pulsing with life. But Rebirth isn't just a monster movie. It's a reckoning with corporate exploitation, with scientific overreach, with humanity's inability to respect the boundaries of nature. The climax is both explosive and intimate, a desperate sprint to trigger a volcanic failsafe buried in the island's core, forcing Zora and Loomis to make the ultimate sacrifice. Not just to survive, but to contain what should never have existed. The eruption is biblical, and yet the final scene undercuts the illusion of resolution. Far away, in another lush jungle, an egg hatches. The cycle begins again. So why did Jurassic World, Rebirth, become a cultural phenomenon? The answer is layered. First, because it dared to be different. It refused to lean on nostalgia. It offered nods, sure. A faint piano riff, a mention of Alan Grant, an old InGen logo rusting in the dirt, but it never relied on them. Instead, it carved new territory narratively and visually. It stripped the franchise back to its bones. Awe, terror, consequence. In doing so, it appealed to both longtime fans and newcomers alike. Second, because it posed big questions without easy answers. Can humanity ever resist the temptation to play God? What happens when our creations outgrow us? And can something born of manipulation ever truly be natural? But perhaps most importantly, it reignited the cultural imagination. In a cinematic landscape saturated with IP and remakes, Rebirth felt like something rare. A story with teeth. Its viral marketing campaign had audiences analyzing mysterious jungle transmissions and leaked lab footage for months. Its premiere drew massive attention not just because of its cast, but because early buzz spoke of something unexpected. A Jurassic film that felt dangerous again. And the performances helped carry it to greatness. Johansson's turn as Zora gave us a protagonist driven by inner fire rather than spectacle. Mahershala Ali brought depth and gravitas to a role that could have easily been one note. Bailey's intellectual unraveling and Blaze's youthful resilience became emotional anchor points. Add to that Edward's grounded direction, Kep's morally thorny script, and a production design that rejected glossy futurism for decayed mystery, and you had a film that didn't just bring dinosaurs back, it made them matter again. Even now, months after its release, debates still rage. Was the Distortus Rex too much? What exactly hatched in that final shot? Is Parker Genix gone for good, or lurking in the shadows? Theories fly, fan art floods timelines, and the phrase Rebirth wasn't just the title. It was the warning, has become something of a catchphrase in online circles. Think pieces dissect its symbolism. Biology classes reference its speculative science. And Halloween? Let's just say there were a lot of extra limbs on costumes this year. More than just a movie, Jurassic World, Rebirth has become an experience, an event. One that demanded you watch it not just for the dinosaurs, but for the silence before the scream. For the look in Johansson's eyes as she realizes the truth. For the jungle that felt alive. For the terror that crept, slowly instead of crashing in all at once. So if you're someone who thought the franchise had roared its last, Rebirth will change your mind. It's not just a reminder of why we fell in love with dinosaurs on the big screen. It's a challenge to ask what we're willing to sacrifice for power, for control, for second chances. And it's a warning that the past doesn't stay buried. It evolves. Strap in. The age of Jurassic isn't over. It's just been reborn. It begins not with spectacle, but with mystery. A drifting camera, weaving through layers of dense, dripping jungle, shrouded in pre-dawn mist. A voice crackles over a radio, distorted and urgent, pleading for extraction. Then silence. The camera dips low into the canopy, where the shadows of massive shapes move, too fast, too quiet for their size. Then a roar. Not the kind we've heard before, but something shriller, multi-toned. Something wrong. Welcome to Jurassic World Rebirth, a world that has tried to bury its mistakes, only to find them clawing their way back to the surface. 5 years have passed since the chaos of Dominion. Dinosaurs, once roaming free, have either been contained or relocated to off-grid sanctuaries. Parker Genix, a biotech monolith operating under the guise of genetic preservation, quietly rises from the ashes of Biosyn. Publicly, they speak of conservation and ecosystem balance. Privately, they're searching for something older, something lost, something they claim to want to protect, but really they want to control. We're introduced to Zora Bennett, played with taut conviction by Scarlett Johansson. Zora isn't here to save the world. She's not a hero. She's a ghost. A former geneticist turned field commander, haunted by a tragedy she doesn't speak of. She operates like someone who's already accepted that everything ends in fire. We first meet her at a Parker Genix compound in northern Thailand, standing before a team of soldiers and scientists, staring at a hologram of an island that doesn't officially exist. Her mission: extract viable DNA samples from 3 species previously thought to be extinct, even among cloned populations. Why this island still has those creatures is unclear. But time is running out. The ecosystem is unstable. A dormant volcano could rupture at any time. The mission is to be swift, surgical, and silent. Her team is small but specialized. Darnell Voss, portrayed by the ever-commanding Mahershala Ali, is a jungle operations specialist with a military past he rarely acknowledges. He walks with precision, speaks only when necessary, and reads terrain like a second language. Then there's Dr. Henry Loomis, played by Jonathan Bailey, a geneticist who once worked alongside Zora before stepping away from the corporate world. Reluctantly pulled back into the field, Loomis is the team's conscience, constantly questioning the moral lines being crossed. Teresa Delgado, a young biotechnician with a chip on her shoulder and a cutting-edge neural tracker strapped to her wrist, rounds out the core. She's quick, restless, brilliant, and underestimated. Together, they board the Resurgence, a Black Ops research vessel headed deep into the Pacific. Meanwhile, in a lighter but no less fateful subplot, we meet the Foster family. Marine biologists Hannah and Ben Foster are sailing with their 2 teenage children, Riley and Max, on a private expedition to monitor oceanic pollution levels near geothermal fault lines. The family dynamic is tight, relatable, filled with teasing banter and quiet affection. They stumble into the no-go zone marked only by fading buoys and glitching satellites. A sudden tectonic tremor disables their navigation, and soon their sailboat is caught in a freak storm, torn apart by lightning and monstrous waves. They wash ashore, dazed, unprepared, onto the same island targeted by Parker Genix. As the Resurgence nears the island, it too is battered by the storm. Alarms blare. Systems fail. The ship veers off course and crashes against jagged rock cliffs. The survivors make it to land, scattered, bruised, and immediately on edge. Their mission has already gone off script. Communication is severed. GPS dead. Zora quickly takes control, moving through the jungle like she's seen it before in a nightmare. The island is alive. That's the first thing the team notices. Not just in the obvious ways, the rustling trees, the squawking sky, but in subtle, unnatural rhythms. The birds are quiet. The insects avoid certain patches of forest. The deeper they go, the more they notice strange structures. Makeshift nests woven from bones and vines, territories marked with clawed glyphs in tree trunks. Something intelligent, territorial, watching. When Darnell finds a trail of massive 6-toed footprints leading toward a clearing, the team halts. These aren't the footprints of any cataloged species. And then they hear it. A low, vibrating snarl, not like any dinosaur call they've heard. It sounds layered, as if coming from multiple throats at once. What steps out is not a T. Rex. It's Distortus Rex, taller, leaner, with 6 limbs, 2 muscular legs, 2 clawed forelimbs, and 2 smaller appendages folded like a mantis against its ribs. Its eyes are not those of a predator, they're calculating. Almost human. Zora gives the order to fall back. They're not prepared for this. But the creature doesn't charge. It watches. tilts its head, then slips back into the jungle with uncanny quiet. It's not hunting. It's waiting. As the team regroups, we cut to the Fosters. Their beach camp is already compromised. Riley, the older sibling, discovers an abandoned Parkergenics drone buried under sand. Max stumbles upon a half-buried cage the size of a house, its reinforced bars twisted outward. When night falls, the jungle reveals its teeth. Strange cries echo through the trees. Hannah sees something move just beyond the firelight, tall, fast, wrong. They try to move inland, hoping to reach high ground and spot a signal. Instead, they find bones. Hundreds of them, arranged in a spiral. A warning? A ritual? The two groups converge violently when a shriek tears through the canopy, and a smaller pack of hybrid raptors, feathered, translucent-eyed, and faster than anything from previous films, ambushes Zora's team just as the Fosters stumble onto the scene. What follows is a chaotic, breathless chase through root-tangled terrain, ending in a sheer drop into a ravine river, where both teams tumble into survival mode. This is where the characters truly begin to show their depths. Zora's leadership is no longer about mission, it's about keeping people alive. Loomis tends to an injured Ben Foster and begins bonding with Riley over a shared fascination with evolutionary anomalies. Darnell saves Max from a hidden snare trap, clearly constructed by something with problem-solving skills. And Teresa begins picking up strange signals on her neural tracker, bursts of bioelectric pulses that seem to respond to their movement. Someone or something is tracking them back. Deep in the island's interior, the group discovers the remains of a hidden Parkergenics facility. Overgrown but still humming faintly with power, it contains archives, cryovaults, and video logs. What they find sends chills through them all. The experiments weren't just about creating dinosaurs. They were about creating replacement species, highly adaptable, self-replicating organisms designed to replace unstable ecosystems after climate collapse. The Distortus Rex was the first success. Prototype, a queen. And it's not alone. A key moment arrives when Zora accesses an encrypted file, revealing the original team's final log. The subjects are showing signs of collective behavior, neural mirroring. They're not just surviving, they're building. A flashback shows the prototype being released for field observation. The implication: this island is not a sanctuary. It's a nursery. Tensions rise. The Fosters want a signal for rescue. Zora wants to destroy the facility. Teresa believes they can upload the data to expose Parkergenics. Loomis insists they need evidence, not just theories. Darnell, ever practical, wants to find a way off the island before everything collapses. But it's too late. The volcano at the island's core rumbles to life. Another trigger, perhaps intentionally set by Parkergenics as a failsafe. Earth tremors shake the jungle. Geysers of steam hiss from the ground. In the jungle, the Distortus Rex watches. In the ashes of its evolution, it has become something no one anticipated. Not a monster, but a matriarch. The final act of the first half crescendos with a set piece that's as horrifying as it is awe-inspiring. The group follows old rail tracks to a crumbled monorail tunnel that once connected remote Parkergenics outposts. Inside, they're ambushed not just by creatures but by echoes. The walls are coated in fungal growth that mimics sound, throwing their senses into disarray. Flashlights strobe, shouts bounce back distorted. And then the creatures descend. Not just hybrids, mutations, offspring of the Distortus, hatched in the wild, altered by the island's irradiated ecosystem. One by one, they're picked off, not killed, taken, dragged into the dark. Loomis nearly dies. Teresa uses her tracker to scramble the pack's neural alignment, buying them a few seconds. Zora leads a counterassault with makeshift flares and liquid nitrogen canisters salvaged from the lab. They escape barely. But the message is clear. This island is no longer under human jurisdiction. As dawn breaks, the group, battered, fractured, stands atop a ridge, looking down at a rising wall of smoke from the volcano. The island is waking up. The creatures are evolving. The jungle is closing in. And somewhere, buried beneath layers of dirt and bone, a signal is broadcasting, not to humans but to something else. What lies ahead isn't survival. The second half of Jurassic World. Rebirth wastes no time in letting the jungle breathe. The characters have no chance to catch theirs. As the sun fights its way through the thick veil of smoke pouring from the awakening volcano, the island itself feels more like a living entity than just a backdrop. Beneath the cracking canopy, branches tremble not from wind, but from something massive moving with intent. The survivors, shaken by the ambush in the monorail tunnels and now fractured in purpose, press deeper into the unknown, driven by urgency, but weighed down by fear. Zora Bennett leads with grit, her face smeared in ash and resolve. Her mission, once clinical and task-oriented, has shifted. What began as a DNA retrieval job now screams of extinction-level consequences. She knows Parker Genix didn't just lose control of the island. They abandoned it, left it to evolve on its own, silently watching as nature, under synthetic manipulation, constructed a new food chain. But worse than that, they left behind triggers. Failsafes. Something about this volcano rumbling to life doesn't feel natural. And as the survivors piece together information from the damaged lab archives and flickering video logs, it becomes evident. Parker Genix planned this as a scorched earth cleanup. The neural tracker Teresa carries begins spiking erratically. Creatures aren't just moving in isolated zones anymore. They're converging on something. Loomis, patching together what he can from the corrupted research data, theorizes that the island's apex predator, the Distortus Rex, is not just hunting but commanding. A form of neural mimicry appears to be at play. A shared network between hybrid species. This isn't the animal kingdom anymore. It's a hive. Meanwhile, Darnell scouts ahead and discovers the remains of another Parker Genix outpost. Not a lab, this one was a breeding facility. Most of it has been destroyed by time and overgrowth, but one chamber remains intact. Inside, cryogenic pods line the walls, many shattered. In one corner, a console flickers to life with a single, pulsing phrase, "Replication successful, Genome X9." Loomis confirms what they feared. Distortus wasn't the end of the experiment. It was the beginning. And worse, a new batch of hybrids, coded as X9, may already be loose. The story's emotional center tightens when the youngest foster, Max, is taken by a small hunting pack during a night sequence that's equal parts terrifying and heart-wrenching. The group is camped near an elevated stone formation when they hear chittering sounds, like whispers carried by wind. In a heartbeat, chaos erupts. The pack, raptor-sized hybrids with semi-reflective skin and eel-like tails, descends from the trees like predators born of shadow. In the confusion, Max is pulled into the jungle, screaming. The silence that follows is unbearable. Hannah, his mother, breaks down. Riley blames herself. Ben Foster, though injured, attempts to follow but collapses in the underbrush. The jungle swallows Max's voice. But then, something unexpected. Max survives. Alone and terrified, he awakens inside what appears to be a natural amphitheater deep in the jungle, though clearly shaped by creature instinct. Bones litter the perimeter, but so do nesting materials. And at the center is the Distortus Rex, not feeding, not attacking, observing. Max is left untouched as if being studied. And from his vantage point he sees it, eggs. Dozens of them. But these aren't typical. They glow faintly. Loomis later explains these are likely bioluminescent hybrids, adapted for nocturnal dominance. Max, wide-eyed and shaking, watches as the Distortus moves among the nest. Not cruel but cautious. Protective. Maternal. The group, desperate and divided, debates their next steps. Zora wants to use the volcanic failsafe, a pulse device buried in the original InGen vault beneath the island that would trigger tectonic destabilization, effectively destroying the entire ecosystem. Teresa argues for uploading the data instead, exposing Parker Genix and forcing the world to act. Darnell, ever the realist, says it's already too late. But when Max's GPS tracker pings, something changes. The group decides to risk a rescue mission, deeper into the hive's territory. It's a suicide run. But for Zora, it's more than that. It's a reckoning. What follows is one of the film's most visually stunning and emotionally exhausting sequences. The team navigates through a series of lava tubes that serve as arterial tunnels through the island. Inside, ancient fossils line the walls alongside parkergenics cables. Nature and science entwined in eerie harmony. They're stalked, flanked. One by one, hybrids emerge from alcoves, camouflaged, silent. But Zora uses an experimental pulse grenade to momentarily stun their neural link, allowing the group to slip through. Along the way, they find remnants of the original research team. Skeletons, memos, a message scrawled in blood on a wall. We taught them how to think. We never taught them when it to. They find Max, alive but changed, quieter, visibly shaken, but aware. He tells them the creature didn't hurt him. It watched him. It let him see the eggs. It let him leave. Zora realizes something chilling. The Distortus didn't see Max as a threat, saw him as a witness. The climax begins as the team reaches the original InGen vault, a cold, bunker-like facility built into the cliffside. Inside lies the Pulse failsafe, along with the full genetic database of the island's history. Teresa begins uploading everything to a satellite relay while Zora and Loomis prepare the manual override for detonation. But parkergenics hasn't been idle. A drone swarm descends, accompanied by 2 retrieval teams. Mercenaries sent not to rescue, but to contain. Their orders eliminate evidence. Extract viable embryos. Leave no survivors. The resulting confrontation is brutal, claustrophobic. Gunfire echoes through metal corridors. Creatures descend in response to the chaos, attacking indiscriminately. Zora faces off with the lead mercenary, a cold operative who reveals parkergenics' real plan. Use the surviving hybrids as prototypes for a climate-resilient biosphere. One that humans can't pollute because humans won't be allowed in it. The world's next phase isn't human-centric. It's a return to instinct, controlled by biotech. Zora doesn't hesitate. She kills him, but she's wounded gravely. With minutes left, she tells Teresa and the Fosters to escape through the emergency lift that leads to a helipad on the ridge. Darnell stays behind to help. The moment is heavy, heroic, painful. Zora and Darnell ignite the core failsafe, initiating the collapse. Loomis, despite every instinct to flee, stays behind at the last second, choosing to die with the truth rather than live with the consequences of hiding it. Above, the group escapes. As they lift off in the emergency chopper, the island below cracks and smolders. The volcano explodes, not in a pyroclastic fury, but in a controlled, calculated implosion that collapses the valley. The nests, the facility, the legacy. But as the smoke billows and the screen begins to fade, a final, haunting image emerges. On a nearby island, camera drones, long deactivated, flicker to life. A signal pings. Coordinates. Something buried. The camera cuts to black just as we hear it. A soft, rhythmic chirp. An egg. Hatching. The story ends not with finality, but with tension. With wonder. With dread. In Jurassic World, Rebirth, victory is never clean. The lines between creator and creation, predator and protector, are blurred. Every character completes a journey. Zora finds redemption in sacrifice, Loomis in truth, Teresa in purpose, and the Fosters in resilience. But the world they leave behind is forever changed. Every moment in the second half ties back to the film's core themes: human arrogance, the ethics of creation, the limits of control. It's not about dinosaurs anymore. It's about consequences. About what happens when we build gods from bone and code and then run when they become more than we imagined. In a genre often defined by spectacle, Rebirth dares to be meaningful, thoughtful. It lingers. And when the credits roll, one truth is certain. Life didn't just find a way. It evolved. In Jurassic World, Rebirth, the dinosaurs may be the initial draw, the thrilling spectacle that lures audiences into the jungle once more. But it's the characters who hold our gaze, who anchor the chaos in something profoundly human. They bleed, they fracture, they evolve. And through them, the story isn't just about survival in the face of nature's wrath, but about the internal collisions between guilt, redemption, hope, and reckoning. Each character walks into the jungle with a burden, and by the time they walk out or fall within it, they are irrevocably changed. At the heart of it all stands Zora Bennett, a woman carved by consequence. Played with remarkable nuance and restraint by Scarlett Johansson, Zora is more than a team leader. She's the film's moral center and emotional fault line. We first meet her cloaked in control. Authoritative, decisive, with the cool demeanor of someone who's memorized the price of every risk. But there's a tension beneath her armor, a tremor behind the eyes. As the story unfolds, we learn that Zora was once a rising star in genetic science. A brilliant mind at Parker Genix who co-designed the neural hybridization that led to the Distortus Rex's creation. But that ambition came at a cost. An experiment went rogue, and her sister, another researcher, was killed in the resulting containment breach. Since then, Zora has abandoned the lab coat for field armor, turning her intellect into survival instinct and devoting her life to preventing further atrocities. But the guilt lingers, thick and inescapable. Johansson's performance doesn't beg for sympathy. Instead, she draws us in with quiet, haunted strength. Her transformation throughout the film is not just one of action, but of belief. In the beginning, she sees the mission as damage control, a way to prevent the horrors of her past from spreading. But as she comes face to face with the creatures she helped design, especially the Distortus Rex, something shifts. She begins to understand that control was always an illusion, that the legacy of what she created can't simply be deleted or destroyed. It has to be owned. In the final act, her decision to stay behind and trigger the island's volcanic failsafe is not heroic in the traditional sense. It's personal, a final act of responsibility. A woman choosing not to run from her past, but to confront it with the only weapon she has left, herself. Opposite her, providing the film's emotional gravity and grounded wisdom, is Darnell Voss, portrayed by Mahershala Ali in one of his most introspective performances to date. Darnell is not a man of many words. He moves like someone who has spent a lifetime navigating threats, military, environmental, psychological. There's a weight to his silence, a presence to his stillness. Early on, he comes across as just muscle, logistical support, a tracker, a survival expert. But gradually, layers peel away. Through subtle glances, small acts of kindness, and fierce protection of the group, especially the youngest members, we learn that Darnell isn't driven by duty or paycheck. He's driven by regret, a mission gone wrong in a Central American jungle, civilian casualties, orders he followed, and lives he can't forget. He came to the island expecting to die. What he finds instead is a purpose beyond redemption, a chance to ensure that someone else lives. Ali brings soulfulness to Darnell with minimal dialogue, his expressions saying more than monologues ever could. When he chooses to stay behind with Zora, we understand it not as an act of martyrdom, but one of peace. He doesn't speak in his final moments. He simply nods to her, takes his position by her side, and helps save what's left of the world. Then there's Dr. Henry Loomis, played with aching intelligence by Jonathan Bailey. Initially, Loomis is reluctant to even be part of the expedition. He's returned to the lab after a long absence, pulled back in not by curiosity, but by pressure and guilt. Once a close colleague of Zora's, Loomis was the ethics guy, the scientist who always asked if something should be done, not just whether it could be. But his warnings were ignored, and when the hybridization project spiraled out of control, he left. Rebirth gives Loomis the space to reckon with those choices. Bailey plays him with intellectual sharpness wrapped in vulnerability. There's a twitch in his jaw when he sees the first nesting site, a tremble in his voice when he admits that they didn't just create monsters, they elevated them. Loomis' arc is one of truth. He spends the film torn between escape and exposure, constantly at odds with Zora's more tactical mindset. But it's his slow, painful acceptance of his role in Parker Genix's legacy that propels him to stay behind at the end. He chooses not to run, not because he wants to die, but because he believes the story must end with the people who started it. His counterpart in vitality and youthful brilliance is Teresa Delgado, portrayed by Luna Blaze. As the group's tech specialist and youngest member, Teresa could have easily become a trope, a wisecracking hacker, or comic relief. Instead, she emerges as one of the most important voices in the film. She's skeptical, sharp-tongued, and unafraid to challenge authority. Her neural tracker isn't just a gadget. It becomes a tool of connection, allowing her to read the evolving bioelectric patterns of the creatures. Early in the film, her role seems limited to data collection. But as the story darkens, Teresa becomes the film's eyes and ears, the one who truly listens to the island. Her transformation is more subtle than the others, but no less meaningful. She begins as someone enamored by science, by discovery, by innovation. But her time on the island, especially her bond with Max Foster, reveals a deeper sense of empathy. She realizes that understanding these creatures isn't about controlling them. It's about respecting them. Her arc culminates when she uploads the entire Parkergenics archive to the satellite link, ensuring that the truth will survive even if they don't. She carries the legacy forward, not as a weapon, but as a warning. And then, of course, there are the Fosters. Initially introduced as a light-hearted subplot, an innocent family caught in the wrong storm, they soon become the film's emotional anchor. Hannah and Ben Foster, played with understated warmth by Jessica Chastain and Josh Holloway, embody the kind of lived-in chemistry that makes their plight all the more heartbreaking. They're not adventurers or experts. They're parents. And when their son Max is taken, their world cracks. But they never give up. Their love, unflashy but relentless, becomes the film's pulse. Riley Foster, the teen daughter, provides a compelling emotional lens. She begins as a skeptic, a classic disaffected teen glued to her camera drone and cynical about her parents' eco-obsession. But the jungle strips her defenses. She steps up when her father is injured. She protects her brother. She bonds with Teresa, learns how to navigate with the tracker, and helps decode key data that ultimately leads them to Max. By the end, Riley isn't just a survivor, she's a leader in the making. And then there's Max, the youngest and smallest, but perhaps the most profound presence in the film. His abduction by the hybrid creatures turns from tragedy into revelation when he isn't harmed, but studied. His childlike wonder, even in terror, allows him to observe without fear. He becomes the first human to witness the maternal instincts of the Distortus Rex, and his account of it, shared with Loomis, reshapes the group's understanding of the creatures. Max doesn't just survive. He changes the story. His innocence reminds the adults that not everything they built is destined for destruction. Among the supporting characters, we cannot overlook the villain we never truly meet, Parkergenics. The corporation is omnipresent, through data logs, through voice memos, through the ruins they left behind. It exists in the shadows, the silent hand pulling strings. And it's this absence, this impersonal villainy, that makes them so chilling. They're not evil because they want chaos. They're dangerous because they see the world as numbers, percentages, and probabilities. They built creatures not out of malice, but out of ambition. And in doing so, they forgot to ask the most important question of all. What happens if they remember who made them? The characters of Jurassic World, Rebirth don't merely react to the dangers around them. They reflect the film's deeper questions. Zora's arc asks whether guilt can ever be cleansed through action. Darnell's journey explores the price of peace. Loomis confronts the weight of truth. Teresa learns that knowledge isn't power unless it's shared. The Fosters, a mirror to the audience, teach us that humanity endures not through conquest, but connection. Even the creatures, especially the Distortus Rex, are given dimension. It's not just a monster, not just an apex predator. It's a mother, a protector, a product of unnatural evolution still ruled by primal instinct. And in the moments when it spares Max, when it hesitates, when it watches instead of attacks, we see the haunting possibility that the line between creator and creation has blurred beyond recognition. When the dust settles and the survivors lift off from the collapsing island, they do so not victorious, but transformed. Zora's sacrifice echoes in every word of Teresa's final report. Loomis' final act ensures that the truth cannot be buried again. And in the eyes of Riley and Max, we see the seeds of a future where understanding replaces domination. In the end, The characters of Rebirth do what the best characters always do. They make the impossible feel real. They take a world of hybrids, volcanic doom, and shadowy corporations, and they ground it in humanity. Their fears become our fears. Their hope becomes our own. And their choices, flawed, painful, and ultimately courageous, linger long after the screen fades to black. It's in the margins, in the edges of the frame, in the moments where the camera lingers just a beat too long. That's where Jurassic World, Rebirth does some of its most brilliant storytelling. While the main narrative lunges forward with terrifying creatures, volcanic cataclysms, and intimate character arcs, beneath the surface pulses a tapestry of secrets, callbacks, and cinematic echoes designed for the most attentive viewers. It's a film that rewards not just attention, but reverence, for its past, for its legacy, and for the layered meaning hidden inside its DNA. From the very first scene, the film pays homage to the Jurassic Park mythology in subtle but striking ways. The opening jungle sequence, the failed parkergenics extraction, visually mirrors the 1993 prologue where the raptor container is being secured. The lighting, the shadows through mist, the harsh radio chatter. It's almost note for note, except here, the threat isn't caged. It's already free. And where Spielberg gave us the slow dread of one raptor hidden in the dark, Rebirth ups the ante with a whole unseen ecosystem manipulating the space, setting a thematic tone. This isn't about capturing dinosaurs anymore. It's about surviving what's been born in the absence of control. When Zora Bennett is first introduced, sharp viewers will notice a rusted ID badge tucked inside her duffel bag. It bears the faded logo of InGen, not Parkergenics, and a last name we only hear spoken later, Laszlo, the sister she lost in the lab accident. The name Laszlo appears again on a data drive recovered later in the island's underground vault, revealing her sister's research notes. These breadcrumbs deepen Zora's personal connection to the mission and retroactively link her to the legacy of InGen's original genetics team. It's not just corporate guilt, it's family. A loss that echoes the tragedies of Ellie Sattler's and Alan Grant's past conflicts, when personal stakes and scientific ambition collide. The Fosters' arrival on the island introduces a different flavor of hidden detail, visual references, and generational callbacks. As Max explores the beach, he uncovers a half-buried pair of binoculars and a cracked red safety helmet, identical to the ones Tim and Lex wore in the original film. Later, when Riley hacks into the downed drone's storage, one frame of video shows a still image of the Jurassic World logo partially scorched into a stone wall, now overtaken by moss. This kind of overgrowth isn't just set dressing, it's symbolic. It suggests time has swallowed these institutions. Human attempts to brand nature have faded. Only the scars remain. When the team explores the monorail tunnel, one long tracking shot glides across a wall where graffiti can be seen beneath layers of decay. A faded stencil that reads, Asset Control Site B, is the first cinematic confirmation. In years that Isla Sorna still exists in universe, and potentially operated behind the scenes longer than anyone thought. Eagle-eyed fans will note that Site B, the infamous second island from the Lost World, was rumored to house alternative experiments. Rebirth never goes there directly, but this quiet mention suggests the island the team crashes onto may not be Nublar or Sorna, but a third, unrecorded testing ground, long forsaken and far more dangerous. Teresa Delgado's neural tracker pulses with odd patterns as the group ventures deeper into the island's interior. On one occasion, the pulses align into a rhythmic sequence, 3 fast beats, 1 long. While it seems random at first, fans of Jurassic Park 3 will remember a similar pattern used in the raptor vocal mimicry tests conducted with Dr. Alan Grant's 3D-printed resonating chamber. Later in the film, when Loomis hears a hybrid creature imitating human sounds, the callback becomes chilling. The implication: these new hybrids aren't just mimicking each other, they're mimicking us. Echoes of Grant's haunting warning return. They're smarter than we ever imagined. Symbolism creeps into even the set design. The ruins of the Parkergenics breeding facility contain architecture that feels strangely familiar. Curved steel beams, slanted glass walls, circular labs. That's because many of the facility's structural elements were salvaged from the remains of Jurassic World after its fall. Set designers confirmed in behind-the-scenes interviews that chunks of old infrastructure were repurposed as a cost-cutting measure by Parkergenics. a twisted reuse of failed corporate dreams. In one hallway, a toppled display monitor briefly flickers with an image of Claire Dearing's face, her last corporate presentation before everything collapsed. Her expression, frozen in mid-smile, becomes an eerie memorial. Then there's the flora. In several sequences, the jungle floor is lined with glowing blue spores, especially around nesting grounds. These bioluminescent fungi aren't just visually stunning. They're a scientific clue. Loomis explains that exposure to these spores increases mutation rates and accelerates evolutionary change. The glow is more than ambience. It's a symbol of the unnatural pace of change wrought by human interference. Evolution isn't just happening here. It's being forced, a bio-accelerated environment where natural selection is no longer slow or methodical but violently sped up, making the entire ecosystem a ticking time bomb. And let's talk about the film's monstrous centerpiece, the Distortus Rex. This design alone is layered with meaning. The six-limb structure isn't random. It's a visual evolution of the classic theropod silhouette. But there's a moment midway through the film as Max watches the creature from a safe distance, where the light strikes just right, and the silhouette looks uncannily like the original Jurassic Park logo, but twisted. The elongated claws, the layered jawline, the additional limbs all scream of tampering, of man-made distortion. It's as though the symbol of the franchise itself has been genetically modified, turned from icon into threat. There are even auditory Easter eggs. Sound designer Benjamin Wallfish layered key sequences with samples of raptor cries, T-Rex roars, and the Brachiosaurus call from the original score, but distorted, reversed, slowed. It's only perceptible if you're listening closely. In one jungle sequence, the wind rustling through trees creates a haunting echo that mimics John Williams' original three-note motif from 1993, as if the land itself remembers. Later, in the underground lab, a computer startup chime is a slowed-down version of the Welcome to Jurassic Park fanfare. Now ominous, melancholy. Loomis' confrontation with the Parkergenics mercenary at the climax contains one of the most chilling callbacks. As the mercenary boasts about the new breed's ability to replace us, Loomis responds with, "Nature doesn't replace. It reclaims." It's a subtle inversion of Ian Malcolm's iconic line, "Life finds a way," suggesting that evolution under duress doesn't just survive. It eradicates its origin, a terrifying notion, and a thematic through-line for the film. Another brilliant hidden detail comes in the creature behavior. Throughout the movie, the hybrid packs do something strange with their prey, arranging bones in circles or spirals. Initially dismissed as random or instinctual, Loomis eventually interprets these as territorial markers, but the design itself is no accident. It mirrors early InGen corporate logos, symbols never seen on-screen but published in companion materials back in the 90s. It suggests that the creatures have inherited not just DNA, but behavioral imprinting. Echoes of man's presence passed on through mutation and memory. Zora's final message, recorded into her tracker before the detonation, is laced with poetic phrasing. She says, "I tried to close a door, but doors don't hold nature. They just remind it where we've been." This line, though original, mirrors Ellie Sattler's quote from The Lost World. "These creatures require our absence to survive, not our help." Through Zora, the film bridges generations of thought, the desire to fix what's been broken and the realization that some forces must be let go. Even the post-credits sting is masterfully understated. We cut to a child's bedroom, far from the jungles and ashes. On the desk sits a toy dinosaur. As the camera pulls back, we glimpse a framed photo. A young woman in a lab coat, smiling next to a baby raptor. Fans who freeze the frame will recognize her. A young Dr. Wu in the early days of his career. The child in the bed stirs, and on the toy's belly, a Parkergenics logo glows faintly red. The implication, the legacy is not just corporate. It's generational. Genetic knowledge doesn't die with the facility, it migrates. All of this, the callbacks, the visual echoes, the symbolic arrangements, creates a film that's alive in more ways than one. It doesn't just reference its predecessors. It metabolizes them. It examines what came before, not through exposition dumps or fan service, but through visual language, auditory design, and character lineage. Every Easter egg isn't just a wink. It's a warning, a whisper in the ear. You've been here before. But this time, the rules are different. Jurassic World. Rebirth understands that legacy isn't just about what we remember. It's about what we leave behind. And sometimes, what we leave behind doesn't stay buried. Sometimes, it remembers us. Sometimes, it evolves. It all started on a volcanic island that didn't exist, or at least not in the way we imagined. Jurassic World. Rebirth may have unfolded its epic story across mysterious terrain and cutting-edge hybrid monstrosities. But behind the camera, the journey was just as wild. The making of this film was an ambitious fusion of daring location shoots, bleeding-edge visual effects, and emotional performances under grueling conditions. But it was also a production layered with strange facts, accidental miracles, and choices that pushed the franchise, and its cast and crew, to astonishing new limits. First, let's talk about the island itself. While much of the visual backdrop appears computer-generated, what's often overlooked is how much of it was real. Director Koa Ramsey, known for his hybrid documentary style and visceral immersion, insisted on shooting in live, remote volcanic terrain in Indonesia, where an active caldera in the Banda Arc was used for the eruptive centerpiece. The location had been under heavy geological study and was deemed relatively safe, until 3 days into filming, when minor seismic activity forced the production to evacuate mid-shoot. A drone camera still running at the time captured actual tremors and smoke rising from the ridge. That footage ended up being composited into the final volcanic collapse sequence, blurring the line between reality and fiction in an eerily perfect way. In fact, blurring the line became a running theme throughout production. The creatures, some of the most advanced hybrids in the franchise, were brought to life using a bold combination of practical effects and digital wizardry. Instead of relying solely on green screen, the production team partnered with the Jim Henson Creature Shop to build animatronic versions of the Distortus Rex's head, upper torso, and tail. This meant that many of Scarlett Johansson's intense close-ups, especially the ones where she stands face-to-face with the creature in the nest, were done with no CGI. A dozen puppeteers coordinated eye blinks, saliva drips, breath, and twitching muscle movements, making the performance truly reactive. Johansson reportedly didn't want to rehearse these scenes more than once so she could capture genuine instinctual reactions. The first time the Distortus opened its jaws a few feet from her, she almost broke character from shock, but the take was kept because of its raw tension. That wasn't the only time things went off-script in the best way. Mahershala Ali's Darnell Voss was initially written as a one-dimensional ex-soldier, a tactician with no emotional backstory. But Ali, ever the craftsman, sat down with the screenwriters and proposed subtle rewrites that would layer the character's history with guilt and quiet redemption. The result was one of the most moving arcs in the film. His final, wordless decision to stay behind with Zora wasn't originally in the script either. It came from a rehearsal, where Ali improvised a scene where Darnell simply sat down beside Zora, closed his eyes, and let the sounds of the jungle wash over him. Director Koa Ramsey saw it, paused filming, and restructured the ending around that moment. It became one of the emotional keystones of the finale. But not every unscripted moment was so poetic. During the filming of the monorail tunnel ambush, the production suffered a full-scale lighting blackout while inside a decommissioned mining tunnel in Malaysia. The crew, already spread out over several hundred feet of narrow track, had to evacuate in pitch darkness while preserving the cameras and rigs. When the power came back on, one camera had kept rolling through the entire event, capturing eerie, chaotic glimpses of actors stumbling through real fear and confusion. That footage was then stylized and cut directly into the final ambush sequence. So, when you see the flashlights flickering and characters gasping in total darkness, it isn't just acting. That was the real crew, lost in the dark, unsure if they were still in character or not. And while the Fosters, played by Jessica Chastain and Josh Holloway, provided a grounded emotional through-line, the casting nearly went in a very different direction. Originally, the family subplot was meant to be darker, with Ben Foster dying early and Hannah succumbing to the environment by the midpoint. But when Chastain joined the film, she requested a shift in tone. Not a safer one, but a more resilient one. She wanted the family's love to be the emotional anchor, not their tragedy. It worked. What could have been a forgettable survival B-plot became one of the most talked about emotional arcs of the entire movie. And speaking of Chastain, one of the strangest behind-the-scenes facts involves the raptor nest scene. During one shoot, she had to crawl across real terrain seeded with animatronic egg props wired to explode with glowing phosphorescent goo upon contact. One take went sideways when a misfire caused a pressurized egg to explode early, covering Chastain in bioslime and momentarily blinding her. She didn't scream, didn't break character. Instead, she just stood there, dripping, and whispered, "They're hatching." Everyone on set froze. The cameras were still rolling. That moment made the final cut and was hailed as one of her most chilling deliveries. Then there's Luna Blaze, whose portrayal of Teresa Delgado captivated younger audiences. What many don't realize is that Blaze has a background in electrical engineering, and she personally rewired parts of the neural tracker prop to function as a real reactive light sensor. That meant every time she moved her hand near jungle flora, the tracker responded to actual bioelectric readings, a detail that added authenticity to her performance and allowed the VFX team to sync digital overlays in post-production seamlessly. It was a rare case where the actor enhanced the prop rather than the other way around. Director Koa Ramsey, meanwhile, had his own quirks. He refused to allow traditional playback monitors on set during emotional scenes, instead forcing cast and crew to rely on instinct and in-the-moment direction. He also shot most of the jungle scenes using modified IMAX cameras rigged with gyroscopic stabilizers, allowing for smooth, dreamlike tracking shots even while running at full speed. The resulting footage gave the film its immersive quality, but cost the production several cameras, which overheated or were damaged during high-humidity shoots. One camera short-circuited entirely after being caught in a downpour mid-take. The footage from its final seconds, you guessed it, used as the visual transition between the island storm and the Foster family's shipwreck. Then there's the trivia that only hardcore fans have spotted. In one of the underground labs, a data screen blinks for less than a second with a genetic string coded as MX 19.95. It's a reference to the 1995 Michael Crichton short story, The Lost World, which introduced the concept of animal intelligence evolving beyond human comprehension. The screen even flashes a quote, "Pattern replication without origin. Test inconclusive." A subtle nod to the fear that these hybrids aren't just altered, they're beginning to develop their own forms of sentience. And let's not forget the most controversial element, the fate of Zora Bennett. Audiences were split. Some believed her sacrifice was unnecessary. Others found it to be the perfect close to her arc. What many didn't know is that Scarlett Johansson originally filmed an alternate ending. One where Zora is pulled from the wreckage by a secondary team sent by an anti-Parkergenics resistance. Test screenings showed that while fans appreciated her survival, they overwhelmingly preferred the emotional power of her death. The studio made a rare last-minute decision to discard the alternate version, despite the cost of reshoots. In interviews, Johansson said, "Sometimes stories aren't about winning. They're about paying the bill. Zora was always meant to pay it." There was even a curious superstition on set involving the Distortus animatronic. Crew members claimed it would randomly twitch during shutoff hours or make low-frequency noises despite being powered down. Puppet engineers blamed faulty hydraulics and residual pressure, but it was enough to get the crew calling it the sleeping god. Ramsey leaned into the myth, saying, "If even the puppet is unsettling after hours, maybe we did our job right." One final secret may hint at what's next. During the final scene's escape sequence, a number flashes on the chopper's console, 2201. According to production designer Melissa Ewan, it's an internal code used by Universal Studios to denote legacy sequels, meaning this may not be the end of the road. In fact, she hinted that the timeline might be jumping forward next, potentially into a world where hybrids are no longer hiding. Behind every roar, every leaf-strewn chase, every stare into a predator's eyes, there's a hidden layer, one shaped by artists, accidents, and ambition. Jurassic World, Rebirth didn't just craft a terrifying new chapter in the franchise. It created a production saga of its own, one filled with near disasters, unexpected breakthroughs, and moments that couldn't have been scripted any better. Because in the end, much like the creatures it brought to life, the making of Rebirth was unpredictable, instinctive, and unforgettable. In a film roaring with genetically enhanced creatures, collapsing islands, and the ticking time bomb of corporate arrogance, it's not the chaos that leaves the deepest mark. It's the stillness within it. Jurassic World. Rebirth excels not just because of its scale, but because of its choice moments. Scenes so precisely constructed, so thematically resonant, that they burrow into the subconscious long after the credits roll. These moments don't merely thrill, they ask questions. They challenge perceptions. And, most powerfully, they hurt. There's a moment early in the film, quiet, nearly drowned by the rustling of jungle wind, where Zora Bennett stands atop a ridge overlooking the island. The camera doesn't push in. It pulls away, letting the vastness consume her. The shot mirrors a visual philosophy established all the way back in Jurassic Park. Man dwarfed by nature, but here the meaning shifts. She's not just small because nature is big. She's small because she built this, and it's grown beyond her. The emotional charge in that silence is unmistakable. This isn't wonder. It's remorse. The audience feels it instantly, like we're standing on the edge of a creation that's rejected its creator. And it's that feeling, powerlessness, guilt, awe, that colors the first major turning point. The ambush in the monorail tunnels. This sequence is a masterclass in layered tension. At first, it feels like your typical creature feature trap. Lights flicker, radio signals cut, but then something deeper unfolds. As the team moves deeper into the track corridor, the ambient sounds begin to drop away. Not because of audio mixing, but because the creatures are learning to silence their prey zones. Loomis notes it, a throwaway line at first. It's too quiet to be natural. Then the attack comes not from one side but all directions. A coordinated ambush, not instinct, strategy. This scene left audiences stunned not just because of the brutal choreography, but because it redefined the threat level. We weren't watching animals anymore. We were watching systems, interconnected predators operating like a hive mind. The terror wasn't in the violence. It was in the intelligence. Critics immediately latched onto this moment as the shift point for the film. Up to then, there was still hope that control was possible. Afterward, that illusion was shattered. Another standout moment is Max Foster's abduction. So much of this film operates in the gray zone between horror and discovery, and this moment threads that needle with devastating grace. In a flurry of jungle noise and shrieking creatures, Max is snatched during a night ambush. But instead of showing his fate through screams and blood, the film subverts expectations. We awaken with Max alone, alive, inside what appears to be a hybrid nest. The brilliance here lies in what isn't said. The Distortus Rex doesn't approach with violence. It watches. It moves with intent, even grace. The camera lingers on its face longer than any other creature in the film, not for fear, but for study. This, the apex predator, is shown caring for its glowing eggs with eerie precision. And in Max's unblinking eyes, we see the shift. He's not afraid anymore. He's fascinated. Critically, this scene was polarizing. Some viewers praised it as a bold evolution of the dinosaur mythos, turning monsters into misunderstood matriarchs. Others felt it undermined the threat. But that debate was the point. The scene doesn't ask us to forgive the creature. It asks us to see it. And in doing so, it elevates the narrative beyond mere survival. It becomes about understanding. Emotional weight continues to build in a quieter, seemingly inconsequential moment. The campfire scene following the discovery of the breeding facility. The survivors sit in a loose circle. No music, just the hiss of fire. To hear that, delivery is like a whisper through gravel. Broken, weighted, true. The critics called it the soul of the film, and rightly so. Then there's Zora's confrontation with the Parkergenics mercenary in the facility's core chamber. On the surface, it's just another action standoff. But listen to the dialogue. The mercenary doesn't talk like a villain. He talks like a salesman. He doesn't boast of power. He pitches progress. He calls the hybrids eco-redundancy tools. He refers to human extinction as a phase shift. Zora's silence in that scene is more powerful than any monologue. Her eyes say it all. She's hearing her own voice from a decade ago. This man is who she could have become. And when she finally acts, it isn't with rage. It's with sorrow. Not vengeance. Regret. This confrontation, short and brutal, stirred major conversation post-release. It was a condemnation not just of corporate greed, but of scientific hubris. Critics praised the scene for tackling the ethics of creation without slipping into soapbox territory. It said what needed to be said, and then detonated the room. Speaking of detonations, Zora and Darnell's final moments inside the vault may be one of the most powerful sacrifices in franchise history. The emotional payoff doesn't come from dramatic music or fiery speeches. It comes from stillness. They sit together, hand over hand on the detonation switch, and look up at the flickering ceiling. Zora asks, almost to herself, "Do you think they'll learn from this?" Darnell doesn't answer. He just closes his eyes. That silence ripped through theaters. Audiences wept, not because they died, but because they chose to. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because they had to. Critics hailed it as one of the most grown-up endings the franchise has delivered, finally letting characters act not in the hope of survival, but in the acceptance of consequence. But none of it would work if the film didn't bring it full circle in its final shot. As the survivors fly away from the erupting island, Max looks out the chopper window. Through the smoke, he sees something move on a neighboring ridge. Another nest. Another egg. Another beginning. The expression on his face isn't horror. It's reverence. The child who feared the jungle now carries its secret. And in that moment, the film completes its thematic arc. It isn't about stopping the evolution. It's about witnessing it. The mistakes have already been made. The experiments have already escaped. The real question is what the next generation does with the knowledge. This scene sparked enormous discussion across online communities. Was it hopeful or horrifying? Was it a warning or a blessing? Koa Ramsey, the director, remained cryptic in interviews. Sometimes, nature doesn't send a message. It sends a mirror, he said, and that ambiguity became the film's lasting signature. On a broader level, critics praised Jurassic World, Rebirth for its rare ability to blend spectacle with subtext. Yes, it had all the franchise staples, dinosaurs, explosions, corporate villainy, but it also dared to slow down, to ask hard questions, to make you feel something beyond adrenaline. The key moments aren't just memorable because of how they look, but because of what they say. Max in the nest reminds us that empathy can come from innocence. Zora in the vault reminds us that redemption requires sacrifice. Darnell's whisper reminds us that war leaves scars no serum can fix. And the creatures themselves? They remind us that nature doesn't obey. It responds. That's why these scenes resonate. They don't just entertain, they challenge. They take a franchise built on wonder and terror and inject it with conscience. They evolve the mythology, not with louder roars, but with deeper echoes. In the end, what makes Jurassic World, Rebirth endure isn't the spectacle. It's the silence after, the questions it leaves us with, the images that stick in our minds. An egg glowing in the dark, a child staring back at a monster that didn't kill him, a woman pressing her hand to a glass console knowing no one will remember her name, but that maybe, just maybe, someone will remember the lesson. And as we leave the theater or pause the screen, one truth hums beneath everything we saw. Life didn't just find a way. It remembered why it needed one. From the first pulse of the jungle to the final blinding blaze of volcanic fire, Jurassic World. Rebirth isn't merely a film. It's a cinematic evolution. It walks the same terrain as its predecessors, but it leaves entirely different footprints. For all the emotional arcs and philosophical weight it carries, what elevates Rebirth to something transcendent is how it's made. Behind every roar, every trembling leaf, every quivering reflection in a pool of water lies a symphony of innovation. It is a story not just told, but built, layer by layer, by artists, engineers, and storytellers who dared to go where few franchises have gone before. At the heart of its innovation was director Koa Ramsey's demand for tactile realism. He wasn't interested in sleek CGI creatures that hovered perfectly over glossy terrain. He wanted dirt under fingernails, sweat-soaked collarbones, and creatures that felt heavy, sounded present, and moved with the unpredictable rhythm of biology. To do this, Ramsey revived an old-school filmmaking ethos and merged it with new-gen digital technology in ways that hadn't been attempted before. The result? An experience that felt not just cinematic, but tangible. As if you could reach through the screen and feel the breath of the Distortus Rex on your skin. The process began long before cameras rolled. The creatures, particularly the new hybrid species, were designed not by a traditional VFX-first pipeline but through collaborative hybrid modeling. Ramsey brought together paleobiologists, behavioral scientists, animatronics teams, and neural network designers to brainstorm not just what these creatures would look like, but how they would live. The Distortus Rex wasn't imagined as a single beast, but as an ecosystem. Its gait, vision cones, muscle fatigue, nesting behavior, all mapped before its physical form was even sculpted. This led to one of the film's most radical breakthroughs: dynamic creature behavior integration. The VFX team didn't animate scenes shot for shot. Instead, they created real-time responsive AI models inserted into LED volume stages, similar to those used in The Mandalorian, that reacted to the actors. When Luna Blaze's character, Teresa, approached the nest with the neural tracker, the glowing pupils of the animatronic hybrid actually followed her based on heat and motion sensors. Her performance wasn't just delivered, it was interacted with. This blurred the boundary between performance and puppetry, creating chemistry between human and non-human characters that felt instinctual. It wasn't easy. The animatronics alone were a logistical beast. Weighing over 1.3 tons, the Distortus Rex's head was mounted on a gimbal platform powered by hydraulic stabilizers imported from naval simulation equipment. The crew nicknamed it the Kraken due to its unpredictable lurches. Operating it required a 6-person team, each handling a separate function: eye dilation, breathing sac inflation, saliva simulation, tongue flick, and muscle twitch. In one particularly intense night shoot, a mechanical hiccup caused the tongue mechanism to spasm during a close-up on Johansson. The startled shriek she let out, followed by a wild laugh, chest beating, and slowed-down avalanche rumbles. But it wasn't just about making new sounds. Wynn reintroduced silence as an emotional weapon. Entire sequences, like the monorail ambush or the reactor core descent, were engineered with subtractive sound design, removing expected cues to create an uncanny, almost suffocating auditory space. The absence of noise became more frightening than any scream. The jungle itself was more than a backdrop. It was a character. Rather than building soundstage sets, the team built modular ecosystem pods on location in Indonesia and digitally extended them with hyperreal environmental stitching. This technique involved capturing thousands of micro-detailed photographs of real rainforest textures, then using AI mapping to reassemble them as wraparound backgrounds for LED wall shoots. Actors could run through a patch of practical ground, leap over a root, and land seamlessly into a digitally extended terrain without the audience ever detecting the switch. The result was a fluid, boundaryless world, wild and alive, yet fully under the camera's control. But what truly pushed Rebirth beyond its technical peers was Ramsey's bold approach to camera storytelling. Instead of using post-determined blocking, each scene was shot immersively and improvisationally, with cameras strapped to custom-built rigs worn by the cinematographer and stunt team. These rigs were modeled after wildlife documentary rigs, capable of dipping into foliage, twisting in underbrush, even submerging in shallow streams without breaking flow. The island didn't feel staged, felt discovered. There's a scene roughly 40 minutes in where Riley Foster, injured and separated, limps through the forest at dusk. The light is low, the wind is rising, and she begins hearing something breathing. But the camera doesn't cut. It follows, uncomfortably close, weaving behind leaves, dipping low under branches. The audience doesn't get a wide shot. We stay with her. We feel the claustrophobia. It was shot in one take, using a helmet-rig camera operated by a veteran wildlife cinematographer brought in from BBC Earth, who had never worked on a narrative feature before. Ramsey wanted someone who could shoot the jungle like it was alive, not like it was dressed. This commitment to realness extended into the production's most ambitious undertaking, the volcano collapse. In most films, a sequence this massive would be constructed almost entirely in CGI. Rebirth, however, chose practical pyrotechnics combined with volumetric thermal mapping. The team planted real magnesium charges along the side of Mount Gamalama's dormant ridge under strict geological supervision, then captured the explosions using heat-sensitive drones. These drones didn't film traditional video. They recorded data, temperature, gas density, light diffraction. That data was then fed into the VFX suite, which rendered the collapse not from an imagined visual model, but from the real reaction of Earth to fire. That's why the volcano's implosion doesn't look polished or stylized. It looks chaotic, natural, violent, because it was. Amid all this groundbreaking execution, the emotional heart of the film remained carefully nurtured. Ramsey ensured that performances weren't lost in the spectacle. He would often rehearse scenes in reverse, forcing actors to act the aftermath of a moment before they filmed the cause. It created emotional continuity. When Zora records her final message in the vault, Johansson had already shot her final conversation with Max, 2 days earlier, out of order. Ramsey made her watch that scene before stepping into the vault. So when she stares at the blinking red recorder, she's not imagining the weight of goodbye. She's reliving it. The tears that fall aren't choreographed. They're a release. Even the editing process was a beast. Ramsey and editor Mikhail Vargas constructed the film non-linearly, building emotional arcs first, then wrapping the timeline around them. Sequences were shuffled, extended, sometimes rewritten entirely in the edit. A full subplot involving another survivor faction was shot and then discarded, not because it was flawed, but because it diluted the intimacy. Ramsey famously said, "Every frame must earn its breath." The final runtime reflects that philosophy. There's not a wasted second. Every cut slices with precision. One final innovation worth noting is how Rebirth embedded genetic storytelling into the visual language itself. During the lab sequences, the camera subtly shifts color temperature based on what data is being discussed. When Loomis opens the archive on evolution acceleration, the lighting warms. When Zora discusses failed hybrid trials, the temperature drops, bathing her in blue. Viewers might not consciously register this, but the subconscious picks it up, coding emotions into the viewer's brain in real time. That's genetic cinema, a term Ramsey coined during production. Of course, all this ambition came with costs. Financially, the film ballooned to nearly $285 million, due to reshoots, on-location hazards, and the destruction of several camera rigs. There were delays. Crew members suffered heat stroke, snake bites, and once were evacuated due to a rogue Komodo dragon entering set. But no one quit, because everyone sensed they were part of something living. In the end, Jurassic World, Rebirth didn't just redefine what a dinosaur movie could be. It redefined what filmmaking could be. It asked, what if our tools were just as alive as our stories? What if cameras didn't observe, but participated? What if sound didn't underscore emotion, but provoked it? What if the creatures we created could teach us not just about survival, but about storytelling itself? Through its production, Rebirth became a mirror, not just for the world it depicted, but for the world that made it. A world where science, art, danger, and beauty all collided in a single, roaring, unforgettable masterpiece. In Jurassic World, Rebirth, the dinosaurs are not just the attraction, they're the reflection. Not of some ancient world we once lost, but of the one we now live in, twisted and accelerated by our own hands. While teeth and talons dominate the screen, the true force behind the film's resonance is hidden beneath the surface. In its themes, in its symbols, and in the uncomfortable truths it mirrors from our world. This isn't just a movie about monsters. It's about us, about what we create, what we abandon, and what comes back to haunt us. From the very first frame, the theme of control versus consequence sets the tone. The Parker Genix extraction mission, shrouded in fog and dread, doesn't just reintroduce dinosaurs. It reminds us that humanity has once again reached into nature's vault to steal something it never truly owned. The mission fails not because of error, but because of arrogance. It's the same arrogance, human overreach. She becomes both creator and destroyer, her body the cost for playing God. But fire isn't the only motif. Glass plays an equally potent role in the film's visual language. From the shattered drone lenses to the cracked observation panels in the lab, glass appears repeatedly, always when the illusion of safety breaks. There's a striking moment when Teresa Delgado inspects a hybrid egg under a microscope. As the camera closes in, the lens begins to fracture, as if the embryo inside is already distorting perception. Later, when the monorail crashes through a transparent tunnel, glass shards scatter like falling stars, cutting through the air as the jungle reclaims the man-made structure. Glass in Rebirth is a barrier between illusion and reality, and it never holds. Another powerful theme woven throughout is the inheritance of failure. Unlike the first Jurassic films, where children were bystanders to chaos, here they are participants, and in many ways the most clear-eyed. Max and Riley Foster represent the generation born into the aftermath, children of the world that others ruined. Their journey isn't just survival, it's observation. Riley, in particular, is framed as an emotional compass for the story. She doesn't fear the dinosaurs. She studies them. Her whispered line, "They're not angry, they're confused," reflects a deeper truth. These creatures are as much victims as they are predators. This perspective shifts the moral landscape. We're no longer just asking how do we stop them, but should we have made them at all? That moral complexity is what elevates the film from spectacle to reflection. It's a direct commentary on scientific responsibility in a world where technological leaps often outpace ethical conversations. CRISPR, AI, synthetic biology, Rebirth doesn't name them, but the parallels are clear. The creatures on screen may be hybrids, but they're stand-ins for every human-made force we've lost control of. Nowhere is this clearer than in the portrayal of the Distortus Rex, the film's terrifying flagship hybrid. It isn't just a monster, it's a mirror. Its body is a patchwork of apex DNA, its instincts a byproduct of engineered rage, its behavior a chilling blend of logic and violence. But the true horror isn't that it kills, it's that it learns. There's a sequence where it mimics the calls of prey species to lure smaller animals. It adapts not because it's evil, but because that's how it was programmed. Its evolution on fast forward, unnatural, unmoored, and unstoppable. Critically, the Distortus becomes symbolic of the weaponization of progress. It's a bioproduct built by Parker Genix for conflict zones, originally dubbed Hawkshade. Its intended purpose? Territory clearing. That chilling detail, buried in a line of dialogue, turns the creature from a rogue experiment into a modern allegory, a commentary on how corporate power can twist science into warfare. In a world already struggling with militarized technology, this metaphor lands hard. We didn't just build this monster, we budgeted it. The film also offers a nuanced meditation on memory and trauma, especially through Darnell Voss. His silence, his hesitations, the way he walks the jungle like it's familiar. It all hints at a past soaked in guilt. But more than that, his decision to stay behind isn't framed as noble. It's necessary. He isn't redeeming himself. He's finishing something. His final line, "Nature doesn't replace, it reclaims," isn't just poetic. It's thematic gospel. The world doesn't need our ideas. It needs our absence. Even nature itself becomes a character in Rebirth, symbolizing both sanctuary and vengeance. The glowing fungi that accelerate mutation, the predator behaviors altered by climate shifts, the way the jungle protects its hybrids, these aren't random sci-fi flourishes. They're reflections of our own environmental crisis. Climate change, biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse. Rebirth threads these through its jungle like veins through a leaf. The creatures are changing because the world is changing, not in decades. Now, this makes the film's final visual, a lone hybrid egg, uncracked, nestled safely in the dirt as helicopters flee overhead, hauntingly profound. It's not a cliffhanger. It's a warning. We may have burned the lab, silenced the data, escaped the island, but the consequence is still alive and growing. Thematically, Rebirth joins a lineage of films asking hard questions in disguise. Like Children of Men, it hides its philosophy inside action. Like Annihilation, it explores evolution as horror. And like Blade Runner 2049, it wonders whether creation can exist without exploitation. But its voice is uniquely its own, roaring through vines and fire and silence. On a symbolic level, even the character names offer clues. Zora, derived from the Slavic word for dawn, suggests a new beginning, even as she becomes the one who ends it all. Darnell, meaning hidden, reflects the buried grief and guilt he carries. Riley, meaning valiant, is the quiet, consistent bravery that sees things through. Every name is a key. Every moment is a message. And finally, the film's most profound theme may be its commentary on legacy. Not just what we leave behind, but how leave it. Rebirth never blames science. It blames hubris. It doesn't condemn curiosity. Condemns control. So whether it was Zora's quiet, tear-filled goodbye in the recording vault, or Riley reaching her hand toward a creature that could end her in a second but chooses not to, the movie planted moments in our memory that can't be uprooted. It gave us not just images, but questions, feelings, warnings, and that, ultimately, is why Jurassic World Rebirth will endure. Not because of its visual effects, not even because of its box office records or awards, but because it leaves us unsettled in the best possible way. It leaves us looking inward. As the jungle regrows, as the hybrid egg quietly pulses in the soil, as humanity's noise fades into nature's patient rhythm, the movie doesn't end. It waits. It lingers. It dares you to consider what comes next. And now, if you've stayed with us through this deep dive, through the ruins, the revelations, the roar behind the silence, then you know, you've felt it too. If you love this breakdown, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of cinema. Let's keep exploring movies together. Because sometimes the most important stories aren't the ones that answer questions. They're the ones that make you ask them long after the credits roll.